Yo, what's up guys? The Cross-Banlist Cup has been ended for like a week now and the positive feedback is astonishing. Thank you all for the support and great ideas for a possible second cup. I gave it a long thought and I had a few concepts in mind, but from the last Cross-Banlist video a lot of people suggested to just redo the cup, mostly of course with other decks, mainly decks that didn't make it the first time, and maybe focus a bit more on tier 2-ish decks. As said, I took my time and think about everything, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is an official announcement for another Cross-Banlist Cup, starting off early 2016, so within the next few weeks. As you see here, 32 decks will battle it out again in part 1 of the cup, just like last time. The group system will be the same, so the top 2 decks of each group will move on to the top 16 playoffs in part 2 of the tournament. Just like last time, every deck in their respective group will face each other once in a match. The winner will get 3 points, the loser will end up with 0 points. This means that the maximum amount of points a certain deck can have in their respective group is 9, if they win all their 3 matches, of course. Now, the most important part here of the cup and of the video is which 32 decks will battle it out here. Same as last time, I want to involve the community as much as I can, so feel free to leave suggestions of decks throughout the history of this game down below. A decklist, the link to the decklist is all fine, because from the previous cup people were asking why a certain deck wasn't present in the cup. Well, you know, there are only 32 spots, so with another cup, feel free to leave suggestions here in the comments. I always read them and try to respond. There aren't really any restrictions for decks, you know, yeah, no FTK, burn, stall decks, that's just not fun to watch. And I decided to again not to include full force dragon rulers, spellbooks, and of course the new and upcoming force, Performages and pals, PP. For the obvious reasons, since they'll just destroy their competition, and again, that's not really exciting to watch. These powerhouse decks, together with Necros, Full Force and other very powerful decks, will be kept for another Cross-Banlist project, possibly later in the future. OCG decks are more than welcome, and decks from the previous Cross-Banlist tournament and cup are of course welcome as well. But of course I'm going to try and focus a bit more on other decks, but it's still interesting to see competitive decks from the history of this game competing against each other with a card pool available at their own time. I'll always try to use a topped deck list, like a topped regional, maybe the winner of a certain regional Shonen Jump or YCS. This way we can pretty much make sure it's quote unquote a good deck list. Before I give a short summary of the rules again, I already picked 8 decks for the cup, for the upcoming cup 2016. Some decks that I really wanted to see in the previous cup, but sadly didn't make it due to less votes and other reasons, of course. These decks were all powerhouses during their own time, so let's start with the first one here in Group A. We have T-Hero, or Destiny Hero B-Town. It was named after Trisark Poonsambat, one of the best players in the early history of this game. It was Destiny Heroes featuring metamorphosis to turn your malicious, for example, into Ryu Senshi, or maybe Zaborg into Dark Baltar. It was one of the best decks and most aggressive decks back in 2007. Then we have an OCG deck. Shadow's Full Force won the previous cup for a very good reason, but this version is from 2015. Construct is banned, and Shadow's had to adapt to these ban list changes in the OCG. The trains were added, so Shadow Trains will be the first deck here for Group B. Then we have Group C, also an OCG deck that at a certain point in this history of the game was the best deck in the OCG. Back in 2013, if not mistaken, but yeah, by the time we got the Stratos card here from the archetype in a TCG, the deck barely did anything. OCG Chronomalies entered the scene as the first deck in Group C. For Group D, we have one of the oldest decks in this game's history, Hand Control / Warrior Toolbox, featuring Donza Luke and Drop Off. The first place of the first Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship all the way back in 2003. Pre-Chaos / Yatta Lock. Very interesting to see this one competing here in the Cup. For Group E, I decided to include an upcoming force, and I'm definitely including their Bosch support to make their decklist, and of course to make their decklist, and this already makes them a huge threat for a lot of decks here in the Cup. Cosmo, yes, Cosmo will be included as an extra deck here in Group E. For Group F, I decided to include a deck that was overpowered as hell. Heck, even an emergency ban list was needed to cut the deck in power. Main decking triple Dark Armed Dragon, Dark Magician of Chaos, Dimension Fusion, Cyber Valley, and 3 Return from a Different Dimension. This deck is pre-Teledat, so on paper, a Dark Armed Return or Dark Armed Turbo should be much more powerful compared to Teledat. So let's see if Dark Armed Return can get the 9 points first place in its group, just like Teledat did in the previous Cross-Banlist Cup. Then we have a deck, for me, one of the most hated decks personally, since the archetype punishes the opponent for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And at full force, Insectors can establish a big board by popping your opponent's cards and of course their own cards as well to trigger their effects and to make an easy OTK. Insectors weren't in the first cup, but they'll enter the second cup here in Group G. And the last deck, another OCG deck we also somewhat had over here in the TCG, and that's a Live Hero for us TCG players, more known as a Bubble Beat variant, running only like 5 or 6 monsters, Stratos of course included, and more than 25 to 30 spells in the main deck to OTK the opponent with multiple Bubble Mans, Excalibur and Blade Armor Ninja. The Live Hero was a huge force back in 2012. So with this, these are the first 8 decks for the next Cross-Banlist Cup 2016. Again, feel free to leave your suggestions of decks, deck lists down below. So the tournament rules: 32 decks will battle it out in part 1 of the cup, and then after that, top 16, part 2 knockout system. Of course, no FTK, loops, burn or stall decks, and as mentioned before, no full force dragon rulers, spellbooks, and performages and battles. The winner of a match is 2 out of 3 games, so the first deck that wins 2 duels wins the match, and the finals is an exception like last time, 3 out of 5. And this is something important, the opening rule, 5 or 6 cards. Personally, I would like to use the rule of opening with 6 cards, just like in the previous Cross-Banlist Cup, but I know a lot of people are against the rule or like to see the current rule of opening with only 5 cards, so no draw phase for the first player. For me, it's still a Cross-Banlist Cup, and I'm playing probably most deck lists that will be used here in the new Cross-Banlist Cup 2016 will probably still be old decks, so decks that used the old rule of opening with 6 cards. And we have to keep in mind that Konami created these decks, the archetypes, the cards, with this in the back of their minds. You know, opening with that 6 cards, that's important for, let's take an example like Mythic Rulers, for example. You know, the draw cards, trading cards of consonants and so on. Those 2 card combinations, 2 card combinations is very crucial for a deck like Mythic Rulers, and that's just an example, but there are probably more decks that heavily rely on opening with the 6 cards, and it's still a Cross-Banlist Cup, so preferably I would like to just use the previous rule of opening with 6 cards, but again, feel free to leave suggestions about this rule down below. And the last rule, just like last time, is no side deck. It won't just be fair, one of the reasons being that of course, the evolution, the difference in available card pools between all the different decks in this game's history. So yeah. Guys, which deck is going to take it all? Feel free to leave suggestions of decks, deck lists and so on down below. I'm happy to read them all, and the end date, the registration will be closed for all these decks and deck lists will be next Wednesday. So December 23, yeah, around the evening here, my time. So I'm hyped for this. I'm definitely looking forward to this. I was missing the Cross-Banlist Cup and matches to play them out with friends. It's definitely something that I missed. It's definitely a nice experience. So guys, yeah, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave a comment or a like if you enjoyed the video. Elitim signing out. Peace.